Looking to the future, will it ever be different? I knew it existed, a vast, shimmering, mysterious world, stretching beyond New York to the Pacific Ocean, and here was I, cooped up in the tenement section of the Lower East Side, with not a glimmer of a chance to make its acquaintance. Maurice Hindus. Taking a chance. Leonard Cavallo walked into the school office and turned in his books. No one asked why he was quitting. No one seemed to care. Outside, some of his friends patted him on the back as he'd just been released from prison. They couldn't understand why he had tears in his eyes. Leonard took a job loading and unloading crates from horse-drawn wagons. At first, his hands got so sore and blistered he had to soak them each night in warm water. Before long, though, they became calloused and rough from the hard work. Although Leonard was helping his family, in his heart he felt restless. He borrowed books from the library to read at night. He slept near the window so he could catch the first morning light and read without disturbing his two brothers, who slept in the same bed. Leonard seemed so unhappy that his friend Mary Accurso kept trying to persuade him to go back to school. Mary was the first girl Leonard knew from his part of Italy who had gone to college and become a teacher. After working for a year, Leonard decided to return to school. He joined the debate society and wrote for the school paper. Yet, as high school graduation approached, Leonard's doubts returned. What next? One of his best friends was going to Columbia University, and he urged Leonard to try for college. College costs money. Money I haven't got, Leonard told Mary. Money I will never have. Money, money, money. I'm so sick of that sound of that word. Mary reminded him that people with less money had gone to college. It's all in how much you want to go. Leonard just didn't see how it would be possible. What about love? Rose Cohen was looking into the future too. When she was 16, a matchmaker arranged for her to meet a young grocer in the neighborhood. Her parents and the young man urged Rose to marry. The man had his own successful grocery store. He would be able to take care of Rose. Rose knew that if she refused, her father would blame her for missing a chance to better things for all of them. After all, if Rose married a grocer, her family would be able to buy potatoes, sugar, and bread at a discount. Rose had met the young man just once. Now she was being asked to decide her future. Rose couldn't help wonder, but what about love? The promise of golden dreams. As young immigrants like Leonard and Rose grew up, they often found themselves asking the same question Pauline Newman had wondered. Will it ever be different? What would their futures bring? Leonard Cavallo dreamed of going to college. Marcus Ravage did too. Rose Cohen, who had never attended school in America, simply wished to learn English well enough to read literature. Maurice Hindus longed to leave New York and experience the American countryside. Pauline Newman was committed to working for the rights of workers. More than anything, though, these immigrants and thousands more like them wanted to escape the poverty and endless toil they and their parents had known. They wanted to be free from, as Leonard Cavallo put it, the monotonous day in, day out routine without any hope of change or hope for the future, without any sense of accomplishment. They wanted to find out what being in America could mean and to discover, as Leonard's grandmother had once whispered, their own golden dreams of the future. But were those dreams within their reach? Leonard. One afternoon in 1907, Leonard Cavallo stood uncertainly by his English teacher's desk. Miss Harding had encouraged Leonard to try for a Pulitzer scholarship. The competition would be fierce, with hundreds of students across the city applying. The winning student would receive $25 a month in free tuition at Columbia University. As Leonard thought of the long months and years of backbreaking work stretched before him, he gathered his courage. Is it too late? Too late for the scholarship? He asked. Miss Harding smiled and assured him there was still time. I'm glad that you decided to take a chance. Leonard took his examinations for the Pulitzer Scholarship. All summer he waited for news. Leonard's family was hoping for other good news that summer, too. Leonard's mother had fallen ill. But when at last the doctor came, he shook his head. There was nothing he could do. One day when Leonard came home from work, his brother rushed to meet him at the door. Leonard's heart began to pound with fear. Was his mother worse? Leonard rushed to the bedroom. His mother reached out her hands to him. Someone from the scholarship committee had come to visit, she told him with an excited smile. Naduccio, my son, it has happened. You will go to college. You will. Leonard Cavallo's mother died before she was able to see her son enter Columbia University in the fall of 1907. After his graduation from Columbia, Leonard began teaching Spanish, French, and Italian to high school students. He went on to complete his doctorate in education, focusing on Italian American children. In the early 1930s, there was a movement to build a trade school in his neighborhood of East Harlem. Leonard Cavallo was among those who argued that the new school, Benjamin Franklin High School, should be a regular academic high school, offering the young people of East Harlem the same opportunities as other children. Leonard Cavallo served as principal of Benjamin Franklin High School for 22 years, working tirelessly to instill in his students a love of learning and a belief in themselves. In his autobiography, The Heart is the Teacher, Leonard said, "My pupils have always been a source of wonder and delight to me. I've loved and sought to understand them, finding in each face the suggestion and spark of something different and new." Leonard Cavallo died in 1982 at the age of 94. Rose. Despite pressure from her parents, Rose Cohen did not marry the grocer. Instead, her health failed. Luckily for Rose, dedicated nurses like Lillian Wald at the nurses' settlement on Henry Street helped her get the hospital treatment she needed. They also arranged for her to go to the countryside to rest. Through Rose's experience in the hospital, she began to hear English spoken by Americans. Eventually, she began to learn and read and take classes. She later married a tailor named Joseph Cohen and had one daughter. Through the encouragement of her new friends, Rose began to write. Her autobiography, Out of the Shadow, A Russian Jewish Girlhood on the Lower East Side, was first published in 1918. Her book received positive reviews, and Rose began to meet other writers and artists. Unfortunately, little is known of Rose Cohen's later years. It appears that she died in her 40s, around 1925. Maurice. Maurice Hindis had come to America from the Belarusian village of Bolshoi Bakovo in 1905 when he was about 13. The Jews in his town had been spared many of the atrocities that happened elsewhere in Russia, and Maurice always looked back on his childhood home with fondness. After 3 years in New York City, he grew ill and tired of city life. He went to North Brookfield, a rural town in upstate New York, where he worked on a farm. Maurice attended Colgate College and went to graduate school at Harvard University. He later became a lecturer and journalist specializing in Russia and was a sympathizer of the socialist revolution there. He authored several books, including an autobiography, Green Worlds, published in 1938. He died in 1969. Pauline. Pauline Newman, a Lithuanian immigrant who first worked in the Triangle Waste Company at the age of 13 in 1901, became one of the first women organizers of the International Ladies' Garment Workers Union. During the shirtwaist strike in 1909, Pauline worked for the International Ladies' Garment Workers Union, raising money to help the strikers. In the following years, Pauline traveled extensively for the cause of labor unions. She gave speeches, raised funds, and organized workers across the country. She also served on many federal labor department advisory committees during the 1930s and 1940s. The girl who had once been afraid of her own words were not good enough to publish went on to write many articles on issues important to working women. Pauline Newman was deeply moved by the tragedy at the Triangle Factory. She spoke at every annual memorial observance of the Triangle Factory fire except for the 75th anniversary in 1986. She died in New York City 2 weeks following that anniversary, around the age of 98. Marcus Eli Ravitch had come to America from Romania in 1900 at the age of 16. While working in a garment shop, he continued his education in night school, even though it meant his pay was reduced when he couldn't work overtime. He even had to pay 50 cents more a month for his room because he was burning more gas to study at midnight. Nevertheless, Marcus persisted, eventually enrolling in high school and graduating. To his disappointment, he didn't win the scholarship he wanted, but that didn't stop him. He researched colleges around the country to find one he could afford. In the fall of 1906, He took a train to Columbia, Missouri, and enrolled at the University of Missouri, arriving with only $17. He graduated in 1909 and went on to study at the University of Illinois and Columbia University, becoming a journalist and freelance writer. Marcus Eli Ravage was the author of several books, including his 1917 autobiography, An American in the Making. He died in 1965. The immigrants who flooded New York in the late 19th and early 20th centuries faced extreme poverty, prejudice, and difficult living conditions. Yet, through determination, hard work, and sacrifice, many improved their economic situations within 1 or 2 generations. Some were able to move from unskilled manual labor to more skilled jobs. Many immigrants who started out at the bottom working at unskilled manual jobs began to move into better paying blue collar jobs on the docks and in factories. Others moved into white collar jobs in the offices, retail stores, and manufacturing and professional positions. In general, boys had more opportunities for higher education and for better paying jobs. Although more girls finished high school and obtained clerical positions, many women at this time were expected to stay home and raise children after marriage. Throughout the early 20th century, reformers worked to try to prohibit child labor and raise the age at which children left school to work. As family incomes rose, children could stay in school longer so that more could finish high school or even attend college. But that did not mean that homework, such as artificial flower making, which often involved young children, was eliminated. In fact, it was not until the 1930s, when laws were passed at the federal and state level, that homework was prohibited. By September 1936, New York children were required to stay in school until they were 16 years old. With some exceptions, 16 has remained the legal working age throughout today. Just as they took their first steps as greenhorns into the bustling marketplaces of the Lower East Side, many people whose voices we hear in this book took their first steps as adults. Some remained in the neighborhoods of the Lower East Side, living and working and raising children of their own. Others took paths that led them outside the Lower East Side, away from their homes and parents and community. Some found success beyond anything their parents could have imagined. And while the young people whose stories we follow did change their social and family behaviors in America, they often were guided by and kept hold of their own ideals and values. In turn, our society has been imbued with rich diversity of cultures, languages, and traditions immigrants have brought and continue to bring. Echoes of the Past. In the foreword to his 1948 autobiography, A Dreamer's Journey, Jewish immigrant Maurice Raphael Cohen, a distinguished philosopher and professor at the City College of New York, gave some advice to his granddaughter. He asked her to try to understand what it was like for her great-grandparents, his parents, who had torn up the roots to come to America to make a better life for their children. By reading about their struggles as immigrants, Maurice hoped his granddaughter would better understand their courage, hopes, and dreams. Understanding is important, Maurice Raphael Cohen said, for he reminded his granddaughter, our lives are brief, and the things we make, whether ships or houses or governments, don't always last. But, wrote Cohen, the echoes from soul to soul will go on so long as human life lasts. Over the last several decades, new immigrants have arrived on the Lower East Side from China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Mexico, the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, El Salvador, and many other countries. Today's immigrants have many of the same needs and challenges as those of the previous centuries. They also cherish the same dreams of an education and better future for their children. The Lower East Side is continually in flux. Walking through its streets today, you hear many languages and see men, women, and children from many different places. People from all over the world visit the Lower East Side Tenement Museum on Orchard Street to learn more about the lives of those who came here to the past. Chinatown and Little Italy bustle with tourists, shoppers, and restaurant goers. Yet, if you stop on Hester or Mulberry or Orchard Street and listen closely, you can almost still hear the shouts of children playing tag on the tenement roofs and the echoes of peddlers crying, "Candy, finest in America," or even the soft footsteps of girls like Rose Cohen rushing to work on a cold, dark morning.